Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. Let me tell you, this is one of the toughest shows I've had to do, not because of the fact that the matchups are difficult or anything like that, but it's because I want to believe in Josh Allen so bad for this Monday night show. Bentley, hey, Bentley, I'm doing a live show, bro. Can you cut it out? Thanks, man. Anyways, this is something as to where, I want Josh Allen to do well so bad, and I believe that he can do extremely well for this Monday night matchup, but I really don't want him to. I'm facing him in the championship, and yeah, it's going to be painful to see both sides of this. I mean, sitting there and looking at this matchup for the Monday night game for the Bills and the Patriots, this is something as to where I think that it's going to be run heavy to an extent, but the Patriots are kind of switching things up with the way that they line up, which we're going to go into here in a second. Meanwhile, it's something where the Patriots really can't pass. So it's going to be a very slow-moving game for the most part, and it's kind of going to be drag it out to an extent. But if I'm sitting there and looking at it, the first thing I want to check out, of course, is the injury report. And the injuries for the Patriots all season have been an absolute nightmare. I mean, I'm talking about absolute freaking nightmare. They have 20 guys on the injury report for this week. 20 guys. And they do this shit like every week. You know, they sit there and they don't want people to actually know. They don't want the other teams to know who's going to be playing, who's not going to be playing. And I get it, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, if I go through all these players and I sit there and figure out who the replacements are, you know, I figure out what the repercussions of them missing time. I mean, this would take me close to 10 hours to do with the research. And yeah, I can't do that. I can't do that. So I try to tune into what the beat reporters are saying, you know, who's actually play, who's not. And honestly, I don't think there are too many guys that are going to be inactive in this, at least guys that would make an impact. You know, sitting there and looking at it overall, it might affect the way that the Bills are able to run the ball, like I brought up. Outside of that, it's pretty obvious where I want to attack this game. Makes sense. All this trickery and stuff is going to drive me absolutely insane. But yeah, last week they had almost this very similar injury report, and only 2 guys were ruled out. There were game time decisions, one being Damian Harris. So I'll obviously cover that one. But the second thing that I look up is the weather report, and the weather should absolutely be gorgeous tonight, 40 degrees, as Mike Fiala would say. It's going to be beautiful. But I want to know where I want to attack in this DFS. So I had to sit there and really dive into, I guess, this DFS matchup and the way that the Patriots have been handling, you know, their players. So let's go ahead and dive into this show, guys. Welcome on into Fantasy Intervention. Let's go ahead and crush this as I share this to as many groups as I possibly can. Here we go.
This is Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
What's going on, guys? Welcome on into Fantasy Intervention. For those that are new joining in here, we're going to be covering the DFS matchup for the Patriots and the Bills. And this is something as to where, like I was talking about earlier, I really want to sit there and attack this Josh Allen type stack. I understand that the way they produced last time was obviously, you know, through the air. And it's something as, I mean, on the ground, excuse me. And this is something as to where, like, I could definitely see that happening again. But Gilmore landing on IR, which, by the way, he was still out last time. Gilmore landing on IR is still a huge blow to the secondary that was just kind of getting comfortable again. And it's something as to where, like, it's still, with Gilmore being out the last time, it didn't help out all that much. It's still going to be a little bit different situation because of the aspect from the linebacker position. Just sitting here and looking at it, the main reason why the Patriots' struggles have been so significant when it comes to the run game is because of the fact that they've been out of their linebackers, right? Their defensive tackles, defensive ends have been hurt. So as I look at it, and seeing that they're probably not going to run as many safeties as they did the past time and more linebackers, I think this could actually open up some opportunities for Josh Allen to get targets downfield. So I'm expecting a little bit more nickel versus dime with Shaquille Calhoun being in at linebacker, which means that the safety coverage is now going to help out over the top instead of inside the box. So this is something as to where like their linebackers, right, and their inability to load the box has definitely been a hindrance to stopping the run, but it's not going to completely fix things. So with the Patriots and the amount of yards that they allow on the ground, this should set up phenomenally for the play action fake and for some of these wild cards. Now, the first one I want to look at, and I did all this research obviously earlier today. This could end up skewing, the whole situation, but John Brown, if he was actually going to play, it's probably out by now. If he's actually activated by 4 o'clock today or right now, then he can actually play tonight, which ends up opening an entire, I guess, just basket of different cases as to what could happen. And sitting there looking at it, like McCourty shut him down last time, but he had help over top from the safeties. Meanwhile, Diggs ate to an extent. Now, Josh Allen was not accurate in this game. Going back and looking at the interceptions, looking at the plays, Josh Allen should have had a lot more opportunities. But in this case, I think they're going to end up using Diggs to stretch the field a little bit more like they have in the past. Meanwhile, John Brown can stretch the field, opening up opportunities underneath for both Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox. So on paper, this game should absolutely be a blowout. Like, hands down, just an absolute blowout. But I don't know if that's the case, being Monday night with the division rivalry and, of course, a Bill Belichick coach team. So, like I said, I don't want Josh Allen to do well because I'm playing him in a championship, but I think this is a week where Josh Allen is still going to have to throw, and they cannot just rely on the run purely. So I'm going to be sitting there, and I'm going to be looking at, Diggs as a guy that I must start. Like, I have to start Diggs, and I think that makes a lot of sense for most people. But I don't think that everybody realizes the opportunity that he has. We talk about Stephon Gilmore being out just like he was in week 8. And guess what? Stephon Gilmore, man, he absolutely matters to this team. They can't sit there and they cannot go man on one side and then bracket coverage on the other side because, honestly, like J.C. Jackson, I love this guy. I think he's a great talent, but he allows some big plays and he bites on double moves big time. Stephon Diggs is really good at that, and he proved it back in week 8. So with that being said, this is something as to where I could see Stephon Diggs coming in, hauling in 2 touchdowns this week on 2 deep targets up against J.C. Jackson, who, like I said, struggles. Now, if they end up putting 2 safeties back there, right, that's where the strong safety and the free safety are going to play deep coverage while the corners play man-to-man, that's going to cause a little bit of an issue. But still, even if that's the case with Stephon Diggs, he does enough underneath work as to where he can still perform. Let's see. For the past 6 games, right, he has hit his value. He's expensive. He's at like $11K, but he's hit his value in 4 of the past 6 games. And by the way, one of those games, right, if he would have gotten a touchdown, he would have absolutely smashed that. So if I'm sitting there and I'm looking at an opportunity to play, Stephon Diggs, I'm going to be doing it all over the board. I don't care about the safeties playing over top. I don't care about the fact of Josh Allen not playing as well the last time they played. But, even last time, even though he did not play well, Diggs still was 5 for 7 and like 84 yards, I believe, up against J.C. Jackson. So I'm going to be sitting there. I'm going to be hammering Stephon Diggs no matter what in this DFS. He will probably end up in close to 70 to 80% of my lineups. I love Stephon Diggs moving forward. But keep this in mind, right? When we sit there and we look at where the Patriots crowd close to the line of scrimmage, this could actually kind of hinder Dawson Knox and Cole Beasley this week. They love to sit there and press the line of scrimmage. Cole Beasley struggled significantly up against them back in, week 8. So this could actually kind of open up an opportunity for John Brown if he's playing. Now, I am going to go through a spiel. I don't know if he's playing or not, but I'm going to go through a spiel real quick with John Brown and the fact that he's only 2,800. Like, what are they doing over there, DraftKings? Why is John Brown 2,800? He's going to get McCourty one-on-one, and I love those chances for McCourty to completely fall on his face up against John Brown. Now, I know that he did shut down John Brown in the previous matchup, but he also had help from the safeties over top, and, part of the time, he wasn't even faced up against John Brown. So, if John Brown does get this opportunity at 2,800, like, I have to smash John Brown in most of my lineups. Now, he is still a little bit risky. but I think he's a cheat code at the same time. He's completely boomer bust. Reminds me of a lot of Tyreek Hill throughout 2018, 2019, where he produced 50% of the time. He has 4 games with over 13 points and 4 games with under 9. And if you take out those 2 middling games, he has 3 games with at least 17.9 fantasy points and 3 games with under 3.1. Like I said, he's essentially like a poor man's Tyreek Hill, as to where, hey, if you play him, he could absolutely smash. And if you play him, he could absolutely leave you hanging. And, for that measure, I think he's safe for some cash games, not a ton of them, but some cash games. But he's special for tournaments. He's absolutely special. I don't really care about his ownership because he's going to be a guy that's going to be in like 40% of my lineups in hopes that he smashes it. And he could end up in a few of my captain spots. Because if he goes out there and he puts up 20 fantasy points at 2,800, you can still play all the studs from the top end. I mean, this is like a no-brainer for me in terms of, setting my lineups and building around John Brown. Now, whether he's active or not, I'm still not aware. They should have announced it by now, but I don't have my stuff in front of me. So, yeah, it's something that's where I think that you have to lock in John Brown and see a lot of lineups. Now, a sketchier play, somebody that even if John Brown is out, God, it's super sketchy for me. I'm sitting there looking at Gabriel Davis. And Gabriel Davis, like, he's been very good and very bad to an extent, over the past few weeks, but he is so touchdown dependent. Like, if John Brown is in, then Gabriel Davis will absolutely need a touchdown to produce. And if he's out, Gabriel Davis will still most likely need a touchdown in order to produce. I mean, sitting there and looking at the fact that he has no more than 5 receptions in a game all season and no more than 3 receptions since week 9, even with John Brown out, that sketches me out, people. Like, that is not good. So my hope actually is that John Brown does play. They have an opportunity to see a little bit more 4 wide receiver sets, which I don't think is going to happen the entire game, but he could end up seeing some more 4 wide receiver sets. And Gabriel Davis's ownership will be slightly lower because he's the 4th receiver on the team at this point. So at his pricing, it'll actually make an intriguing tournament type play. I think that he could see less than 5% ownership as long as John Brown is active. Now, I'm not going to sit there and try and jam Gabriel Davis in every single one of my lineups. And honestly, if John Brown is not active, I don't see that changing very much. But I still think that he is a solid upside as to where his ownership will be extremely low if John Brown does play. And I think that it still will offer you that touchdown type upside. So I don't even mind. I'll play John Brown and Gabriel Davis together in the same lineup and Stephon Diggs, because that's how that's how much I think the Bills could end up passing. Now, someone that I really want to attack because it's such a contrarian play is Dawson Knox, right? We're sitting there, we're looking at 3 touchdowns over the past 4 games and at least 4 targets in all but 1 game over the past 5. That's 15 targets over the past 3, including 4 of those targets being in the red zone. So I'm sitting there looking at Dawson Knox as a potential tournament breaker, right? Where he's not going to have a ton of ownership because you're going to see the Patriots are so good up against the tight end position, when in all reality, it's something as to where Dawson Knox is used in a different way than most tight ends are. I mean, they almost use him as a running back out of the backfield or a slot receiver, as to where they have him running out routes. They have him running into the flats. Most tight ends, they attack the seams, they attack the middle of the field because they're a bigger, more physical target. Meanwhile, he's going to be on the outside. And with Josh Allen, what Josh Allen is good at is freezing these middle linebackers and even these outside linebackers and forcing them to hold their positions. Meanwhile, Josh Allen, acts like he's going to scramble up the middle or run up the middle. And all of a sudden, that linebacker has to come off of the tight end who's running in the flat. Meanwhile, you're sitting there looking at Dawson Knox wide open in the end zone. So I do think that Dawson Knox could easily get in the end zone this week. And I think it's something as to where, if he can get that linebacker and safety coverage, him being Josh Allen, off of Dawson Knox, I think it's a smash play. It's something as to where it's going to be contrarian. He's relatively cheap, and it's almost like a tournament breaker to an extent. I love it. Now, speaking about the way that slot receivers run routes and whatnot, I do want to bring up Cole Beasley, because Cole Beasley's somebody that, man, he's expensive. He really hasn't hit that level that I want to see on a regular basis, but it's like you almost have to play him, right? But the way that he's going to succeed is by beating these middle linebackers and beating these slot corners going up and through the middle, pretty much using the seam like a tight end would. That's pretty much how the Bills run their offense. And I was going to have all the charts ready, but I'm kind of struggling to keep up because I did not have it ready. But anyways, the majority of his production over the past few weeks has actually came through the seam and coming right underneath where the safety is, where Stephon Diggs is running that out route, or John Brown previously was running the out route. So he's been catching these passes right between where the safety lineup and the linebackers. So this is almost exactly where I want to attack the Patriots offense. So this could actually be a smash play for Cole Beasley, but keep in mind that he really has not hit that payout line, that line where, hey, you got his worth. Now you can see multipliers after this. He hasn't done it all that much. He's pretty much sitting right there below where his payout line is on the season. And I mean, the Patriots overall, they've been okay. They've been okay up against the slot. So I'm sitting there, looking at the way the Patriots crowd that line of scrimmage. And by the way, thanks to Mike Fael once again for, kind of giving me a little bit of insight on this. But this is something where Cole Beasley, I don't know if he's a lock, even close to it this week. I think he could perform. I think he could do okay, which makes him more of a cash game play to an extent. But just be cautious when sitting there and dumping him in a ton of your lineups at his pricing, because he's going to make it very hard to play some of these other, high upside type guys. Now, we talked about it earlier when it comes to the running back position. And this is something that's tough. This is something where I don't know if I want to sit there and attack the running backs as heavy. I mean, the last time they went off, both players got into the end zone. Moss went over there. He had 22 touchdowns on 80 yards. Meanwhile, Singletary had a touchdown on over 80 yards, right? So they both had over 80 yards and a touchdown. And Moss has been the lead back for the most part, but there's no guarantee he's going to produce. And with Singletary, both of their upsides are extremely capped. Looking at Moss, he had a 3-game stretch where he put up double-digit points. Outside of that, he only has one other game in week 1 where he had double-digit points. And his pricing is at 7,400, which is pretty much anticipating he's going to put up around 15 fantasy points. He's only averaged 7.6 fantasy points per game. That's not good. I want to buy in on him. I want to buy in on the matchup. But talking about having more linebackers into this defense and sitting there and looking at possibly a different lineup and Bill Belichick being able to take away different things when it comes to the defense, I don't love it. I know that he gave you 20 points last time, but it's important to not chase those points constantly. Now, if John Brown can get a couple deep balls, right, and they pull some of the safeties out of the box, sure, it could open up some big-time opportunity for Moss. So I actually do like lineups where I'm going to be playing Josh Allen, where I'm going to be playing, John Brown, and then I can throw in Moss for some, goal line opportunities possibly, or even some 4 or 5 yard runs, because guess what, man? The Patriots allow some massive yards to the running back. But I don't want to sit there and chase last week's points and just throw Moss out there. I'd much rather, spend my money on some of these other guys in the $5,000 range, the $4,000 range, and then I'm getting some of the more expensive dudes and spending $7,600 or I believe $7,400 on Zach Moss. So I like Moss. The Patriots allow 4.7 yards per carry and about 5.5-ish over the past 3. But I do expect a little bit more nickel versus dime, so they might be able to slow that down a little bit. I just don't know the upside. I think it's a safe cash play, but I don't know the upside on this. He's not utilizing the red zone nearly enough to get me really, excited, stoked on it. He's utilized a decent amount, but not over the top. I think he has 10 red zone carries over the past 3, which is good, but not enough at the goal line. I'm sitting there looking at Moss as a 20 to 30% type lineup guy. And honestly, Singletary is in a little bit different spot, but I'm kind of looking at the same result. I mean, the Patriots have allowed the 6th most rushing yards per carry to the running back, but they've also allowed the 9th lowest explosive run rate. So in other words, they get gashed constantly. That's how the Patriots operate. They get gashed for these 4, 5, 6 yard runs on a regular basis, but they don't really break. I mean, sitting there and looking at it, the last time they played, he had runs of 17 and 18 yards. So that's great. And he's also 7th in explosive run rates, by the way. But sitting there and he's getting 8 to 14 carries a game is going to make it tough to be dude, I need to go get this guy. He could have a breakaway run for a touchdown. I mean, sitting there and looking at it, the Patriots have allowed 10 touchdowns to the running back inside the 10 touchdowns so far this year. And they've all come inside the red zone. So for Devin Singletary to expect him to have a bunch of breakaway runs and really be, a top end option, I think is kind of like a pipe dream to an extent. Now, I'm still going to have him in a bonus or two, and I'm still going to, or captain spot or two, and I'm still going to have him in a lot of my lineups. But once again, don't overindulge. He's extremely expensive for what his average is, which isn't far off of Zach Moss. So the only hope that I have for these guys, and the reasons why I do want to have them in my lineups, is not just from the performance of week 8, but also because of the fact that Zach Moss has 10 red zone carries over the past 3 games, while Singletary has 7. So yeah, I'm sitting there looking at it like you're going to have to get in the end zone to return the value of over 7K per player. It's going to be tough to actually see that. Now, if we look at the other side of things, right, when it comes to the running back situation, I have some people real quick in the comments. I'll go and give them a shout out. Danielle, what's up? We were actually just talking about you the other day. She said, don't say that about Beasley. I still think that Beasley could perform. It's just going to be tough to sit there and see the upside for DFS purposes. So, it's something that's where I still think that Beasley could have a touchdown, could have 5 receptions for 50 yards. But I just don't know if we're going to see that, 10 reception, 120-yard game that we've been seeing from Beasley on like a regular basis. And thank you, by the way, Bendy, I guess, for letting me know that Brown is out. So that's going to make it extremely interesting for Gabriel Davis. Now, if we sit there and we look at, where was I? The running backs on the other side. We saw Harris put a whooping on them last game, week 8, for 102 yards and a touchdown. Honestly, like, they've struggled so far this season, them being the Bills, up against more scat back and quick hitters than they have like big time, rushers like Sonny Michel, for example. But they still haven't allowed a single rushing back to get over 61 yards on the ground, I believe, since week 10. So I'm sitting there looking at the opportunity for Harris if he does play, and I'm a little bit skeptical about it. I mean, he is expensive. He's up there at like 96 or something, or 8,400. That's what it was. He's up there at 8,400. So like, I'm sitting there and looking at like his upside from the games that he's played so far this season. Like, he's limited. Like, he is extremely limited upside wise. I mean, his best game was the 102-yard and touchdown game. So he put up 16 fantasy points, and he's at 8,400. Like, that would exceed, like, that price line, that payout line would exceed his best week yet. And he's questionable. So sitting there and expecting like Damian Harris to return value on you, like, that's not good. The only way that I'm going to be playing Damian Harris is going to be in the lineups where I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, and to where I don't think that Josh Allen can hit his payout line. I don't think that Cam Newton can hit his payout line. I don't think Stephon Diggs can hit his payout line. I don't think that Cole Beasley can hit his payout line. Like, you're sitting there looking at these top-end options and thinking like, yeah, none of these guys are going to hit, so I need to at least get some points. This game is going to be a 10-13 game, and I don't see it being like that type of game. So unless Damian Harris comes out, just plays lights out beyond any game that he's done so far this season, which is possible, but the Bills have been a lot better on the ground as of late, I don't want to sit there and chase Damian Harris. I mean, the Bills, outside of last week up against Melvin Gordon, I don't even think they've allowed a touchdown like the past 4 or 5 games. So it's something as to where, like, I'm not going to be chasing Damian Harris. I really don't want to chase Sonny Michel either. I mean, he's sitting there at 7K, and he hit 16 points back in like week 3 or something like that. But why do they have Sonny Michel up at 7K? I mean, maybe the touchdowns allowed by the Bills, but like, that's still bizarre to me. I don't know. I'll have him in one lineup, Sonny Michel, just in case he does get some red zone touches. But I mean, Cam Newton doesn't hand the ball off in the red zone. It's pretty much just Cam Newton City, and I just don't see how Sonny Michel could do it. But as a dart throw, I guess at 7K, 7Ks normally aren't dart throws, but as pricing, it could be, because it's going to scare pretty much everybody off. I guess it could make sense. Meanwhile, the running back that I probably like the most, and this isn't even great, and it's widely dependent on whether Harris plays or not, but James White, right? I mean, he feels like the Gabriel Davis type if John Brown was going to play, where, hey, it could work for him if he's in. It could create some opportunity for him. We talked about how the Bills actually struggle with more of like the scat backs and, the quick hitters. So James White could be that guy. Now, I expect New England to be down, so this actually opens up some opportunity in the passing game for James White, who, by the way, actually has had some weeks where he could pay off his value. But the Bills have allowed 4 games this season where receptions alone to the running back position accounted for double-digit fantasy points. Plus, they have one where they allowed 9.7 points receiving points to him, 8.6, 7.2. So that's just the receiving side. If James White can get a few carries in there, maybe get a touch in the red zone, maybe get a touchdown, even if he gets 40 yards on the ground, that's just going to add on to the potential of him getting double-digit points in the air. So I actually do like James White at his value. And it's something where I think that James White is going to be safe, very safe in cash games, and he could be a tournament play. Now, do I think he's going to be a bonus type player? Probably not. I'm probably not going to put him in the captain, but I'm going to feel safe putting him in a good amount of my lineups, and I definitely don't think he's going to lose me money necessarily tonight, as long as Damien Harris does not play. If Harris plays, he's going to be quite a few, or in a few less. But keep in mind, Damien Harris does not catch passes. Like, I think he has like 2 receptions or 2 targets, something like that, over the past some odd weeks. So it's something as to where, like, White will still be okay. He'll be all right if Damien Harris doesn't play, but I like him a lot more if Harris does not play. This is such like a Rex Burkhead game for me. Like, I wish Rex Burkhead was in, because I'd be playing Rex Burkhead everywhere. This is Rex Burkhead written all over it, and that's just it's depressing. It's depressing. I wish Rex Burkhead was in. As for the passing attack for the New England Patriots, oh man, this is not good. Newton's only hit 200 yards passing 4 times this season, only 2 times since week 10. He also hasn't attempted 20 or more passes more than twice since week 10. So the receivers have been terrible, but still, like, Cam Newton needs to move the ball. And whether that's going to be looking at Jacoby Myers, N'Keal Harry, or the tight ends, James White, doesn't matter. Like, he needs to move the ball this week if he's going to be able to. Whoa, I have a kid yelling outside. It's still going to be dependent completely on, whether or not these receivers can get yards after the catch, but you're going to want to produce up against the Bills when it comes to passing in the air. So looking at it, I really think that Tre'Davious White is going to have a massive impact on this game overall as to where Cam Newton's going to be targeting. We saw in week 8 how, Cam Newton, we saw how week 8, Cam Newton did not target a receiver covered by Tre'Davious a single time. Myers went out wide like 25 times or so. And when Myers went out wide, we had Tre'Davious White actually slide over to the side that Myers was on. But whenever Myers went to the slot, Tre'Davious White just played his normal side. So this is something as to where Jacoby Myers didn't see a single target while covered by Tre'Davious White. Now N'Keal Harry's back. So this could make it extremely interesting as to whether White will actually come and follow Myers to the outside when he does go to the outside, or whether he's going to stay on N'Keal Harry. I feel like it'd be kind of counterproductive to sit there and study N'Keal Harry the whole time and then go cover Myers. So I really don't think that he's going to shadow Myers when he goes to the outside. That could be a big opportunity for Myers. But either way, even if he does go shadow, we still saw Myers have a decent game out of the slot when they played in week 8. So looking at it, outside of Hopkins and DK Metcalf, it's been slot guys who have beat the Bills like over and over and over again, at least since they played the last time. So Myers being the leading receiver, right? He's coming off of 7 receptions, over 100 yards receiving last week. I really do think he could be the guy. And he's 200 cheaper than Moss while being only 200 more than Sony Michel. Like, Moss is far from a guarantee for me, and Michelle's a shot in the dark. Jacoby Myers should be more expensive, especially after having the explosive week that he did this past week. But, I mean, he's probably one of the best values on the board. I believe he's 7,200. Like, that's a steal for me. I think I'm going to lock Myers into a good amount of my lineups this week. He's the safest option on their offense, and he's seen at least 5 targets in all but 1 game since being the starter. I know he's only hit 72 value 3 times, 7,200 as a value 3 times, but I don't know where you really feel great attacking on this Patriots offense. Like, you're like, oh man, that guy's definitely going to go off this week. It's tough. So sitting here and looking at it, like, I think that Jacoby Myers at 7,200 is probably the best and the safest option on this Patriots offense outside of Cam Newton himself. Cam Newton, by the way, is actually really cheap. I believe he's at $9K. So there's only sitting there and looking at this and dissecting it. There's only 2 players who are averaging more points than what their payout line is above the kickers. Josh Allen's one. Damiere Byrd is the other at $4K. And I know it doesn't sound sexy. I know it doesn't sound great. But Damiere Byrd is actually like strangely intriguing for me. He's averaging 8.8 points per game. So that's already getting over his pay line. Sitting there and looking at his output, a big reason as to why is the Houston game, but he still has 5 total games as to where he would hit over the 4K pay line so far this season. And sitting there and looking, if you take out the nasty game up against Baltimore a few weeks ago, 4 of the past 6 games, taking out that Baltimore game, he has over 7 targets, 4 out of the 6 games. 39 total targets in these 6 games. 39. That's literally 6.5 targets a game. Like, that's sick for a wide receiver to get at 4K. Like, that's almost a bigger smash than John Brown would have been if he was actually active, but he's not. So sitting there and looking at it, man, he hasn't had a ton of receptions, and just because he's getting these targets doesn't always mean production, but he's still getting these deep targets. He's getting these high-value targets. I mean, Buffalo is more about explosive runs allowed than they are about explosive pass plays, but this is still something where you could see Levi Wallace one-on-one and actually have that big 40-yard pass for a touchdown. You know, maybe they run the hell out of the ball for the first 2 quarters of the game or 2.5 quarters of the game, or 1.5 quarters of the game, I should say. And then right before the halftime, if they're in the hurry-up situation, play action, fake, hit Damiere Byrd deep. I know it's not a sexy play, but God, man, Damiere Byrd at 4K, he can make a lot of these lineups actually work for you. I like Damiere Byrd. I think he's a smash play. And I'm going to be playing him in a lot more lineups than I will like Sony Michel and Zach Moss and Singletary. Well, probably about equal to Singletary and Moss, but still, I think it's a good play. I like it in games where you know that or you're designing your lineup around the Bills being up. So you're going to sit there and you're going to look at the Bills being up. They're going to run the ball a ton, so you have Damiere Byrd in the back end. It also works for lineups where you're going run heavy for the Patriots, and you think that Damiere Byrd could just see a play action fake for a receiving touchdown. So that's something as to where I believe that Damiere Byrd is actually value at 4K. Now, for the wide receiver side, I'm fading Olszewski. I'm going to be fading N'Keal Harry. I might play Harry in one lineup just to hope that he gets a touchdown matched up against Tre'Davious White, but N'Keal Harry has not been good, and he's really not playing too many snaps. Gunner, like I just brought up, he's not really even playing anymore. You know, he's playing on special teams and all, but you're really taking a dart throw if you take a shot on Dunner. Or Gunner. Did I say Dunner? Gunner. Now, as for a dart throw that I really do like, this is something where Dalton King and Asiasi, they're not getting targeted, but they're on the field and they're running routes. And I know that part of that has to do with play calling, but come on, like, get them some design plays. And I was sitting there, I was talking to Mike about it because Mike's a big Patriots fan. So I took a lot of advice from him, actually right before I hopped on the show. That's who I was talking to. And, he's giving me a couple different tips and updates on things that I was doing my research on, because I want to make sure I'm as accurate as possible. But he's sitting there saying, like, Dalton King has actually been very close to scoring multiple times. And as of late, he actually almost had a touchdown, but it missed his fingertips by like an inch or so. So he likes Dalton King's potential upside and target quality more than he likes Asiasi. But from my research, they're both getting a lot of snaps, right? Like, Asiasi's blocking a little bit more, but he is lining up wide. Like, he's pretty much playing wide receiver on a few of these snaps because they need somebody that can go up and body and get these first downs. Now, Cam Newton, it's not resulted in opportunities because Cam Newton's just not targeting them. But like I said, this could have to do with play calling. And there is no way that McDaniels can, Josh McDaniels, play caller, can ignore the fact that they've allowed Hunter Henry, Noah Fant, Jordan Reed all to have games, 3 of the past 4. 3 touchdowns allowed in the past 4 games. And out of those guys, I mean, Hunter Henry, an amazing game. Noah Fant, amazing game. And Jordan Reed still had double-digit fantasy points. When we go back and we look at it, like, they actually had a brutal stretch up against tight ends right before they played in week 8, where they were allowing 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, like up against multiple opponents. So I feel like they did drop a couple plays for Izzo, but Izzo's whatever. Like, he still had 2 receptions on 3 targets for like 24 yards or something. But yeah, I'm sitting there looking at it, and Izzo actually had the most amount of targets, or he tied for the most amount of targets so far in the season while playing up against the Bills. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to sit there and get the rookies involved in this game plan. See what they have to offer. See if you need to go add another tight end in the offseason. See if they can actually be a major piece of this offense. And I personally like Asiasi more. I like his ability to line up as a wide receiver and to possibly see the smaller Tre'Davious White. This dude is like 6'3", 6'4", like 280 pounds. If he can body up on White, or even Levi Wallace for all that matters, but if he can body up on one of these guys, Cam Newton can just throw a fade just one time. Just hit him on a fade one time. I mean, you're talking about, just an amazing, amazing dart throw that'll allow you to play some of these top-end guys. They'll allow you to play your lineups with Josh Allen, with Stephon Diggs, with Cole Beasley, and maybe even Cam Newton. I haven't put a lineup together yet, but that's something as to where they can make these lineups work. And I'm not saying play both in the same lineup or anything like that, but I would take shots on both these guys, and I would take a decent amount of them. I'm not saying just go throw them in one lineup. I'm talking about go throw them in like 3 or 4 lineups apiece and just, hope they hit. It's something where the Bills are just susceptible to this position, and I don't know how Josh Daniels could be ignoring that. It's just crazy to me. So just as a recap, I think that Josh Allen's obviously must play. Stephon Diggs is obviously must play. Cole Beasley has an opportunity to go off, but, hinder your expectations for him this week. I don't think he's going to have that 120-yard, 10-catch type game. If he actually beats them, he's going to have to get behind the linebackers and the safeties. I guess John Brown is out, so that eliminates him out of my lineups, which means that I'm going to be taking a few more shots on Gabriel Davis. But once again, hinder your expectations. I'm thinking like 10% of your lineups or so should have Gabriel Davis. He's very touchdown dependent. As for the running backs, don't overinvest in Devin Singletary. Don't overinvest in Zach Moss. You don't want to chase these points because of the fact that they have not done it on a regular basis, although Devin Singletary has done it more often than Zach Moss. On to the other side of things, I would love to play Henderson if he's in, but he's not a lock to be a top-end guy. As his best week did come up against the Bills, but it was only 102 yards and a touchdown. That's great and all. That doesn't even hit your price line, your payout line for Damian Harris this week because he's so expensive. He could end up having a few breakaway runs, and I love that. So that's why I'm saying you still should play him, but don't overindulge in him. Sonny Michel is a fade for me outside of one lineup as to where you're hoping that he gets a couple goal line carries. When we look at James White, he's probably my favorite running back at his price. I still don't love him overall, but it makes sense. The only player that is a lock for me on this team outside of maybe Cam Newton, and I wouldn't even call Jacoby Myers a lock, but Jacoby Myers is going to be in a decent amount of my lineups, probably close to 30 or 40%. N'Keal Harry is a complete fade. Damiere Byrd could make things really interesting. And my favorite dart throws on the entire slate are the tight ends. We talk about Asiasi and Dalton Keene. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode. I appreciate you guys for coming out and listening to our show today. It's been fun. It's been very fun. This is something as to where I need to make sure that when I'm building my lineups for this matchup, I am telling an actual story for this. There's sometimes where you can just throw things out, right? You can see what sticks, you can see what really hits. And this one I feel like needs to follow a storyline. This game is going to be either very one-sided, it's going to be a very low-scoring game, or maybe the Patriots can grind out some opportunities, and we could see some big plays happen when it comes to the Bills and the running game, the Patriots and the passing game. I need to sit there and tell myself a story for this thing to work out. Make sure you guys don't overindulge. When you guys see the average points per game put up, take a look at those and make sure you guys do take those into account when it comes to the payout line. And yeah, good luck tonight. If you guys want to check us out and actually get 3 of my lineups, we do patreon.com/fantasyintervention. Once again, it's patreon.com/fantasyintervention. It's $2 a month. You guys get 3 of my lineups throughout the week. Or I'm sorry, 3 of my lineups for each slate throughout the entire week. And we actually will be doing the playoffs as well. So if you guys are out of your fantasy football leagues for season long, it is time to hop into some DFS. This is the perfect time where you guys can actually learn how to play throughout the playoffs, and you guys can get my lineups. So we're going to be having a bunch of guest hosts on here. I'm really, really excited. Kira should be one of them. We have Fantasy Pros and Joes, and of course, Rosalie Michaels will be making her appearance again. Maybe even Bo. We got to see what happens. Anyways, y'all, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. You guys can go find me over there at Fantasy Intervention, fantasyintervention.com, youtube.com/fantasyintervention, and FF_intervention on Twitter, along with join our circle _ on Twitter as well. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you guys for letting me intervene with your fantasy football life. I'm out.